welcome everybody to the first of four Saturday sessions here in September and October of 2022. And my name's Dean Walker, and I've just had the pleasure of a bunch of us introducing ourselves to each other, folks who have dialed in at the last minute here on this Saturday morning, and going to spend some time together. And I was just describing a little bit about what these introductions are for. This Living Resilience is the name of this little organization that I put together over the past 7 years to provide support and resources for kind of an unusual community that's loosely knit around the world. And it's often called the collapse aware, or if one of us on the call had his way, it'd be the collapse acceptant community. Um, People who have really just gotten one way or another a strong sense, felt sense of things are not right, things are not going well, things are unraveling, is one way it can be put. Things are headed in a way that will result in large scale destruction. And where someone puts themselves on the continuum of how they define collapse, how they define predicament is another word that's used a lot. That continuum goes from what can be called kind of a hopeful stance of, well, if we just rearrange the things that we have been doing all along, the things we grew up with, well, then we're always able to come up with the fixes. We're always able to come up with the solutions, and certainly, well, that'll happen this time. And what undoubtedly, if you're watching this video, you're probably not in that camp. um, that continuum goes from that hopeful business as usual, it's also called rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic phase of being involved with this conversation, all the way out to what can be called the near-term human extinction crowd, who, just by the name itself, it's pretty self-explanatory that people at that end of the spectrum are seeing a full-on extinction of humanity. And the question then becomes just how quickly that would occur. That's again on the far end of that spectrum. And what I'm hoping to introduce you to today is a set of resources and support groups and special focus study groups and community of practice, kind of a deep dive experiential study group of people who have committed themselves to really expanding their capacity to be present in the face of these immense challenges that are present now. And again, if you're interested enough to be on this, watching this video or on this call, you've obviously got some sense of things are looking like they're going to keep getting worse. And there's very, very few positive signs in any direction from my point of view. We've gotten a brief chance, those of us who are on the call live, to introduce ourselves to each other and a brief little sentence or two about kind of what our stance is in this conversation. I think what I'd like to do is just start by mentioning that it was about 12 years ago that I went from being a lifelong, very concerned, very aware that humanity was going to be doing bad things to ourselves and the planet. But about 12 years ago, it became obvious that these things that I knew were coming far faster and more intensely than I'd ever imagined. And I immediately kind of shifted my gears to um, validate, to vet that information, which at that time was the way was described was um, not just climate change, but abrupt climate change. And that seemed to be the piece that was getting people's attention. It certainly got mine. And when I heard that presentation and read a particular book in that area, I immediately shifted from my workaday world, which had already shifted out of the corporate arena quite a while before, to other work. But now I was really singularly focused on vetting this material because it's clear that either this, if it's true, then this is clearly the transformation of humanity, whether we're ready for it or not. And so I set about vetting the material of abrupt climate change, and I very quickly learned how to learn about that and vetted it. And it turns out that it is indeed intensifying and accelerating every year. It has been validating that point time after time, even after these 12 years. But I got out of that conversation as quickly as I could because I just truly I can't tolerate the whole deny, which at that time the denier conversation was quite strong in cultures around the world, but especially in the USA. And what I stumbled into was a stack of other predicaments that actually were coming on or present much more fully than climate change or abrupt climate change at that time. And that's when I realized, wow, that very few people are going to do this level of research and being able to um, take the time and intense focus that it took for me to validate not just climate change again, but each of these other predicaments. And I indeed validated them to my satisfaction and commenced to writing a book about the process. And that was the 2017 book, The Impossible Conversation, choosing resilience and reconnection at the end of business as usual. And it was at the end of writing that book and putting it out in 2017. It was in 2016 that I started to put together this body of work because I realized that I really wanted some kind of a support or some sort of community I could call on and connect with as I was diving so deep into these predicaments, these impossible conversations. And there was almost nothing. There were a few workshops out there. It's just basically nothing, and with any kind of continuity or depth to it. So that's when I started to put these pieces together. And it has been a counterintuitive and very difficult process for me, even though I have a lifetime and a career history of doing a number of different kinds of training and coaching in the corporate world and also in the personal development world. And so I decided to create the very resources that I wish I had encountered when I had my woke moment, so to speak. And one of the most difficult pieces that has been kind of plaguing me in each chapter of evolving and refining the work, refining the offering, making it relevant for people is this is not a linear conversation. This is not like training people at AT&T to have their business group be more effective in their communication and in their results produced. You know, those kind of trainings have been done forever. Linear, you know, progressive learning model, and yeah, it just wasn't that. And then, as we all, I think, have experienced in these past 5 years in particular, been able to see that actual facts aren't influential in any way in this or any other conversation of substance in our world. And that's been a mind blower. You know, I have a naive part of me that says, well, if I just got clear enough, if I just could convey the gold nugget that has moved me, then that's going to move somebody else. And in fact, what I think we've bumped into as a global self terminating culture is that facts are actually counterproductive in a conversation. They will, the more refined the facts, the more of an opportunity we'll have to watch the entire conversation degenerate. People, you know, we are obviously on a ridiculously polarized track at virtually every level of society as we know it. So that leads me back to what I'm going to be introducing to you here. So what's this evolution now? I can claim no perfection. I can claim this seems to be a more effective set of emphases than I started out with a few years back. What I'm very, very excited about is that it is collaborative, far more collaborative than it's ever been before. And it's far more experiential. And I'm also very excited to introduce to you, and this is kind of a previews of coming attraction piece for the following 3 Saturdays. We're going to be talking about deeper and deeper skill sets that really take some work to learn them. Today, we're going to start out with kind of the base end, like what is the for the most reluctant person to become collapse aware, what does it take? We're going to get there in just a second. This preview of coming attractions, I'm particularly excited about in that in the face of a world of fake news and immense polarization, what could possibly make a difference in a person's system if they're willing to put in some work? What is it that could expand their capacity to be present in the face of larger and larger stressors? Another way to say that is, how could I expand my capacity to be present and to be of service to the people I love in the face of larger and larger stressors? I'm excited to let you know that I'm very present to a list of those possible inner resources to tap into. Those are coming in these next 3 introductions, or for anybody who wants to just take the fast track and just sign up at the free new member level of this living resilience thing and just dive into the intro course there, kind of fast track it, and you and I can talk in a Zoom call on the side and get you going as fast and as deep into those inner resources as you'd like. It's the closest thing to hope that I've been able to muster in myself, and it's in no way a hope for the continuity of humanity in any recognizable form whatsoever. the hope is that there is some way, there's a remarkable journalist and author that I just respect and admire deeply, a guy named Dar Jamel. And he has a book called The End of Ice. And I recommend it highly. If you have just one book you want to read about what's going on the planet, he offers a remarkable combination of world-class journalism and truth-telling with having a vulnerable and deep heart, deep engagement with the web of life, like very few people I know, much less authors that I've ever read. He talks about how shall we comport ourselves in these times, knowing what we know. Each of us knows something that's not right, all the way to that extreme end and so on. And everything that I'm wanting to talk to you about today and offer is really in pursuit of that inquiry. How can we come together and deepen our exploration of how much heart, how much engagement of our core, how much of our center can we reclaim in the name of being of service to the people we love, no matter what's on the horizon, no matter what the timeline. So actually, I'd like to stop there. And before I give you the introduction to that base level and kind of the entry level of the conversation, can I just get, I want to just open it up and see if any of you are sparked to ask a question or say something from your perspective. I just love to hear anything you'd like to say at this point. Jordan, you got anything?
Yeah, anybody who knows me knows that I always have a lot to say. Every doomer that I know came as a dreamer. There's no one that came wanting to quit. We all came wanting to love. And a problem properly stated is half solved, and a predicament properly accepted, a predicament properly stated is half accepted. And our predicament is overshoot through global industrial civilization. And we as Homo colossus are addicted to civilization. It provides us life and meaning in the same way that drugs and alcohol in the addiction phase provide life and meaning to the addict. And so finding a way to accept that is, to me, the pathway out of the suffering of collapse awareness, which is like the suffering of addiction awareness. I am an alcoholic and I am drinking myself to death. And then the acceptance phase is when you face that and you stop drinking. And then you are into a different phase where you carry that baggage with you into a certain and uncertain future. And that's where I want to be, is to be a funnel for people that are falling into that and circling the drain of awareness to maybe get through it. And it's not an answer, it's not freedom, it's just acceptance. And I also think that maladaptive actions as attempted solutions to a problem that's actually a predicament is furthering the choking hold on the community of life and making the collapse that will be experienced not by Homo colossus, but by the community of life and the earth much more dramatic. And the suffering at scale that's existing now is equal to the suffering at scale that will exist through collapse terminus when these things go away. So it's the critical conversation, and we're inventing this space. This space doesn't exist for hominid. And that's why the work that Dean does and everyone here on this screen is doing to invent this space for people out of love, as if you're sitting in an intervention with a loved one and saying, hey, man, this is no good. We got to do something different. And it's not going to be easy and it's not going to be fun, but that's what it is. It is what it is. And we have the power to face that. And that's what I have to say.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
What's a doomer, actually? Is that DOOMER or?
Uh-huh. It is.
Oh, it is. All right.
Like just like the comment, doom and gloom, or this old phrase. And So
Okay.
are you wanting more of a definition of doomer? Is that what you're asking for?
Yes.
Okay.
What
Jordan,
is a doomer?
Jordan, do you feel qualified?
Yeah, I mean, a doomer is a slur that is levied against people that are in collapse awareness and acceptance as an attempt to separate them from the pack to be attacked by the hazing of dominant culture.
Sorry, the line. I didn't hear that. Sorry,
Oh,
the
so
connection.
yeah, a doomer is a slur term that is used by folks to try to isolate people in collapse acceptance to make us look like quitters or something negative in the space. And so, and the thing
Oh,
is,
yes, right.
the language is important, but I'll just take whatever name you
Yeah.
want to throw at me. And I don't love the term, but I accept it because it's generally true. And I try to turn it back on people and say, yeah, I am that. I am that. You see, history has a lot of examples of people in marginalized social communities taking back the language
Mm,
that is used against them and saying, you know what, I'm
yes,
going to use that word that you used to try to tear me down because the words don't matter. The life and the love matters.
yes. Okay.
And Christina, I would like to just underscore one piece of what Jordan was saying. It really has become common parlance to call somebody a doomer is a slur at the scale of one of the most famous science communicators on the planet, Michael Mann, climate scientist out of Pennsylvania. He, in his most recent book, took out his usual focus, a negative focus on people who are deniers, and he replaced
Right.
that with doomers. So that
Oh,
people,
yes.
I don't know if you're familiar with a particular organization, movement, if you will, called deep adaptation, which I think is very much rubs right up against what Jordan's talking about in the acceptance arena.
Right.
And these people, like I'm hard pressed to find a more loving and deeply inclusive human beings. And for him to put his singular negative focus and tension on that community
Right.
is breathtaking. So this is
Mm,
really happening, and
mm,
I have a feeling it will get worse before it gets better in terms of what can be some really strong uh, destructive elements, socially destructive elements that can be aimed by the corporatized community as they
mm,
line up behind somebody like Michael Mann. Yeah,
right.
so I just wanted to be really clear that this is a slur and it is derogatory and it's at scale now.
Okay. Mm,
Yeah.
yes. Well, it's a war.
Yes. Is there anybody else who
Right.
would like to say anything so far and just reflect on anything that has particularly gotten your attention?
Um, I'm kind of thinking that that for me anyway, I'm moving more into well, certainly acceptance, but I'm looking at what I'm doing is it's a grieving process is what I'm doing. I feel that I'm looking for community to grieve along with me. Now, how that looks, I'm not sure. Like, certainly I still only know the grieving ones that Kubler-Ross talks about, anger and denial and acceptance and bargaining and all kinds of stuff. And I feel that that's maybe capturing maybe where more I'm at. And I'm looking for like people that are sharing my diagnosis and because they're in the same diagnosis as me, of not a good outcome. And so where I'm heading then is not of this world, and I'm looking for supports, and I don't know where I'm going to find it or if I can, that isn't of this world. So I don't know. That's where I'm heading, or I'm landing. That's a new word I'm using. So I don't know what I'm trying to say, but anyway, I just wanted to say that.
Great,
Thanks.
thank you. Well, we get to connect from time to time in our safe circle calls, and if there's ever a chance for us to have a bit more detailed conversation, I'd love to hear anything more you'd like to share about that. And we notice we've got a new person, Samuel. It looks like you're joining us. Can you just check in and say howdy for us? And is it possible to see you?
I can't turn my camera on, but I can
Okay.
say hi.
Well, hello there. Where are you calling in from?
California.
All right. I'm curious, how did you find out about this this odd little call? You're more than welcome to be here. I'm just curious.
Oh, I mean, I'm on the email list, so
Ah, great, great. Okay. Well, welcome here. We're just kind of doing a little hopscotch between various topics that seem to resonate with the conversation about collapse awareness and collapse acceptance, and just some of the more personal ways that each of us is carrying these conversations. So yeah, welcome here, and about to change gears and offer to y'all kind of what the entry level of this body of work that I'm talking about today can look like. And I'm definitely assuming that everybody here is very aware of what I'm about to say and the elements that I'm about to describe. And I'd also be very curious if anybody has, as Jordan shared when he first came on today, he's in the thick of it. He's up to his earlobes right now in the reality of what it is to be in a massively impacted environment. Smoke and fire and heat and drought. It's just incredible stack of impacts that he's grappling with right now. So I'd like to just talk about that. One thing I could mention is there was a really short essay with a kind of a simple self-assessment tool that I was introduced to when I first started doing the research for my book. And I was really starting to get, wow, this is an extraordinary situation going on. And that was written by a guy named Paul Chafurka. Paul Chafurka is a Canadian blogger, and by his own admission, he's been a part-time Buddhist, and that engagement with Buddhism was part of what informed him creating what he calls the stages of awareness. And what he asserts is that there's this ladder of awareness, these stages that we can go through that start with being basically clueless. He calls it dead asleep. And one thing to know about this progression is that at the beginning, at the lowest or the beginning level of this ladder or these stages, you have the business as usual world. And that's going to be the lion's share of the world's population are here. The vast majority, in fact, all of us spend most of our time here in this business as usual gigantic sphere, if you will, that I'm trying to describe with my hands on the screen. And there is no desire there that's built into anything or anyone, that just automatically you can assume you're going to start going up this ladder of awareness, these stages. So basically, if we're firmly saturated and situated in the business as usual world, chances are we're going to be there till the end of our days, whatever that means, and pretty much clueless to this conversation that we've been having today. The first level up, first step up out of that, is something that I've come to call first aid level resilience skills. And he calls it one problem. And basically it means something has rattled us, something has shaken us to our core. And we realized, holy shit, this is really happening. Something is really going on that's got my attention. For instance, if you've got a 98% of the people in the Houston, Texas area don't give a damn about the whole conversation about the environment in any way, and especially about climate change. They just don't, it's just not real for them, or they outwardly disdain the environmental people and so on. That can shift for some number of people when something like Hurricane Harvey that came through a few years ago and devastates many of the neighborhoods of Houston. All of a sudden it can be a very different reality if you're driven out of your home, out of 12 feet of water, and you're sleeping with 50 other families in the high school gym. That might be enough to rattle your cage to realize there's one problem that's enough to have me think maybe something's not going well here. There's still no guarantee that you have anything remotely like collapse awareness or collapse acceptance going on. We're not even close to that arrangement yet. But this might rattle a person's cage to realize there's something of a large enough scale that maybe for sure I need to do something about it to get my family out of this high school gym and somehow figure out how not to have my house get devastated again. So you can feel that, you can get a sense of there's inner rumblings and so on. And yes, there are other stages. Those stages we're going to get to and talk about mostly in the coming 3 Saturday sessions to follow. What I want to talk about here is the first aid level resilience that's absolutely necessary. And what I've noticed here, I tried to mention this before, there's a kind of a membrane of resistance, even in the doomer crowd, even in the collapse aware community. There can be kind of a resistance to actually learning about this level of skills. It's often called self-regulation and co-regulation. And let's imagine, if we will, that we're in that disaster relief situation. A hurricane's come through, it's devastated our community. We're in with our family and 50 other families in this building, and we have to make sense of it. We have to find a way to be present. And if I'm the father in this family and I'm barely able to stay present, I'm in shock. We're all in shock. How do I get more present? If I'm in shock, I am not present. And many of us have a tendency to want to disassociate, to actually leave our body. We have very little presence of not just seeing and hearing and so on, but actually not being present in our body, much less being able to be present or care for our loved ones. So these are really remarkably important skills. They're so simple. they're so basic that it can seem like, no, I got that. I don't need that. I don't need to practice that kind of thing. Like, until we get whapped upside the head, so to speak, by the hurricane, the fire, the flood, you get the idea. So there's a strong possibility that, in fact, the disaster relief people who oftentimes show up in this kind of event that I'm talking about, and they bring in skill sets that can be taught in that kind of a rough situation. It's amazing how when people are interviewed months or years later, it's quite possible that all that happened as they went through the relief efforts and these self-regulation and co-regulation skills in this emergency situation, and then they got back to their homes and they got to start rebuild and so on and so on, where they end up is back as close to normal, as close to what they were used to as they could possibly get. That was their target. That was what they were aiming for. That's what they were struggling to do over the weeks, months, and years that it takes to bring them back to center. I'm just going to pause there to let you get the idea of what I'm calling a membrane of resistance. That's the power of that addiction that I heard Jordan describe so beautifully before. The addiction has us want to return to that which is called normal in the addicted state. That's the only thing that addiction knows how to do, is to keep replicating itself, keep validating itself. So it's not exactly a massive jump in stages of awareness that Paul Chafurka was talking about, but it is a step up from, and more awake from, and more engaged from the business as usual, completely unconscious, or as Paul Chafurka likes to say, dead asleep level. So something I want to just say, even though I doubt anybody in this call is particularly wanting to stay at this level that I'm describing, I really honor this level. There is no changing where somebody's starting, where somebody is landing, when somebody is grappling with their entire town being burned out or flooded or hurricaned, and on and on. And the amount of inner capacity they have at that time is exactly the amount of capacity they've got. And I've had the privilege of working with an awful lot of people around grief work and around this kind of resilience level, the resilience skills building and self-regulation and co-regulation. So I'm going to stop talking in this kind of delivery of stuff way. And I'd like to just do a couple of these very, very simple self-regulation practices. You already likely do these things in one form or another in your life. Chances are we've all at least learned a few of these. There are many of them. There are some that are quite deep and you can deepen for the rest of your life. But let's just get a sense, and I'm just going to walk you through a few of these self-regulation skills that are meant to bring a person back into their body, being present as much as they can be with the people they love around them rather than being blown out. So I'm going to just slow down my pace of my speaking. And I noticed that I haven't taken a full breath in quite a while. So I'm going to invite us all to take a series of easy, full breaths at your pace. And I'd like to invite you to take a nice, full, easy inhale, and then perhaps purse your lips and extend, make that exhale nice and long. Just make it a nice, long, slow exhale until the next inhale. I notice that my eyes want to soften their focus while I'm doing these long, slow exhales. And as you continue those long, slow exhales, bring your hands to your legs and allow yourself to just feel your hands give a gentle pressure to perhaps your knees or your thighs. Just a soft, slow pressure, feeling your hands caressing your knees, your thighs. Perhaps one more, those full inhales and slow exhales. And I'm noticing in that last long, slow exhale, after I had been just getting a felt sense of my own legs, my own body. In that long exhale, this one, I felt just a little bit of pressure of tears behind my eyes, just a little bit of emotion. I don't know quite what the emotion was, but I could just feel just a little waft. So that's enough for now. And so allow yourself to bring yourself back to awareness. Perhaps you could just take a look into the screen, to the other faces on the screen. Just notice if you have any new sensation in your system, in your body, after just that brief time of breathing and sensing. Is there anybody who'd like to say anything about what you're noticing?
I think just a being,
Mhm.
being here. I'm looking at a mountain and I don't know, it's just like a sitting down.
Mm. Beautiful. Thank you. So we're coming up on the last few minutes of our time together, and I really appreciate your patience with how much just my monologue you've endured. I really, I'm not pleased with that, but I so appreciate your willingness to hear it. The context is important. these next steps, if you'll join me either in these coming Saturdays, which I sure hope to see you again, it would be lovely to have you here. I will also be posting the recordings of all these in the Poetry of Predicament podcast, which is the podcast that goes with all this work. And also in that living resilience space, if you'd like, I can post, I will be posting in the show notes for these videos on the YouTube channel, which is the podcast of Poetry of Predicament. And I'm also happy to put them in the chat today of how you can contact that public, the community space of living resilience, and also how you can connect up with this this material again at your own speed. I wanted to give you this context because our culture tends to want things to happen really fast, and that addictive quality that is we are saturated in this culture that Jordan was talking about tends to want to have us jump to the highest and the greatest and the best high as quick as we can. And those inner resources that I was talking about for the next few stages of those Paul Chafurka's stages that I'll be talking about in these coming weeks. I'd really like us to be able to start at this pace and this feeling of connection that we've got right now is a good starting point to go to those next stages. And I guess the way that I'd finish up what I wanted to talk about today is whatever stage of awareness, so to speak, is that you might find yourself on, whatever topics or emphases you have in your path to collapse awareness or collapse acceptance. It's our hope that you'll find some support, some community, and some resources that will be of use to you at that level, whatever that level is. Could I just ask if there's anything that each of you might want to share about where you're landing, how you're doing, what you're left with after our time together? Just a chance to kind of check out with one another.
I guess I'll give it a try. You know, the banal gift of life is the absolute joy of life. And the being of beingness demands nothing. And we were born wild and free and whole and complete. And as such, we will die. And whatever you think may or may not happen after that death, we are in the magic and the gift. And we owe it to ourselves, that gift of life, and the community of life to thrive within it, whatever the consequence. I love the glory and I accept the guts completely and wholly. And that's what collapse acceptance is. But you get there on your own. And just like when you show up for your first day in a recovery session, there's no judgments. There's no, you're not good enough to be here. You're not addicted enough. You're not sick enough. You're just here. And there's just love. And I'm so thankful for everyone to be here. And I look forward to further work. And Dean, you're amazing. So much love and gratitude for you.
Jordan, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Something to share as you land complete?
Hi, I just want to say thanks. That was beautiful, Jordan. I wish I was so well spoken. I'm grateful to find this, and I will try to make the next few Saturdays if I'm around on those mornings. I appreciate this community a lot, good, because I'm finding myself very alone. So
Yeah.
this is thanks.
Thank you, Stella.
I wanted to just say thanks. It's been a very good hour, well spent. Thank you.
Good to have you here. Christina, anything from your neck of the woods?
I'm not sure. I'm still
Mhm.
thinking about things. But yeah, it's lovely to speak to everybody and just be a part of this today. And I'll be back next Saturday evening because it's
Right.
the evening here.
Very good. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Samuel, would you like to say anything before we go?
Mm, not much. I mean, I'm I appreciate this community because I like Stella, I have been finding myself pretty alone in this. And it's, very stressful to sort of be learning about collapse all of a sudden. And so finding a group of people who at least acknowledge that it's real and maybe have ways that we can better prepare ourselves is very nice.
Yeah. And Samuel, I don't know if you're connected with the regular gatherings that we have in the Safe Circle calls here on Tuesday evenings. All that information will be in the show notes and the posting of this video and this recording. And also, Jordan, could you say something about the collapse acceptance calls that you're part of?
Yeah, those have actually been on hiatus for a wee bit, trying to just find a new footing. I know that the wonderful David Baum, who has the Collapse Club YouTube channel, is preparing to do a new idea of sessions. Michael Shaw in the Living in Time of Dying
Mhm.
does a monthly session, and he's expanding, and what Dean does. And I think the goal is always to expand and then contract in a way. So find connections and then be local. Collapse is hyper local. It's not a global thing. And so find people that you resonate with and then go help others. Put your own, oxygen mask on first and then go help others. And that's kind of what we're doing. But you'll find your tribe. That's what we do. That's what we are.
Everybody, thank you so much, and look forward to, if at all possible, seeing you in any of the coming 3 remaining Saturday sessions. And Jordan, my heart goes out to you, and thank you for being such a warm and glorious contribution to today's call. Thank you so much for your heart, brother.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Bye.